transformative episode where we dive deep into the realms of holistic healing and mental wellness. I'm your host, Sana, and joining me on this remarkable conversation on mindful living is our remarkable guest, Dr. Cindi Saj. Now, let me share a bit about Dr. Cindi with all of you. She's an educator, clinical director, and a true pioneer in the fields of counseling, yoga, and holistic self care. And today we'll be exploring the profound insights from her acclaimed books, Finding Your Wellness and Finding Your Purpose, while also uncovering the often misunderstood truths about or behind therapy methods like EMDR and hypnosis. Now, listeners, prepare for an enlightening journey, informative journey that challenges traditional perspectives and empowers you to tap into your inner healing potential. So, with that, Dr. Cindy, welcome to the show, and we all are thrilled to have you with us.
Well, thank you for the very kind introduction, and it's my pleasure to be here today.
Great, great. So, Dr. Cindy, talking about your books, Finding Your Wellness and Finding Your Purpose. So, in both of them, you explored the transformative journey of self-awareness, and I kind of associate self-awareness with mindfulness. Which not at a broader level, but is basically being aware about your presence and your present, circumstances or situations or surroundings. So, can you explain how this journey helps individuals unlock their innate healing power?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you very much. So, I'll start by talking about the first book called Finding Your Purpose. It is titled A Guidebook to a More Meaningful Life. And I love that you brought up the word self awareness because this book does help you understand yourself and who you are. And when we say that word self awareness, it really is a self journey. You learn about your strength, you learn about the areas that you really do shine. And it reminds you from a positive psychology approach to be really mindful of what you have. We're often comparing ourselves to others, and we forget to look within for what we already have as our gifts, as our strengths, and really what makes us unique from others. So we're often trying to be like others, and we forget that we have these amazing gifts as is, who we are. So, Finding Your Purpose, a guidebook to a more meaningful life, does promote self awareness by even looking at each chapter has action tasks. Some of those action tasks will be, to look over a list of, inner strengths and to identify what inner strengths you have. So the chapter is called like the inner characteristic trait identification, and it goes over all these amazing words that we forget we have. So this idea of, insightful, generous, witty, motivated, accountable, stylish, adaptive, attentive, loyal, playful. So these are all words that people are then reminded of, hey, I have that quality inside of me. And that's where we really pull up the mindfulness in the present, here and now. So it's not about having a mind full, it's about having a mind that's kind of directed at what you're thinking about. When we get control over our thoughts and we get control over how to kind of, think better thoughts to ourselves, it does enrich our life and it does improve, this idea of why are we here? What is our purpose in the world? It gives us more clarity around understanding that. So that is the first book called Finding Your Purpose to a Guide More Meaningful Life. Did you have any questions about the first book or did you want me to jump on to the second?
I think, oh, let's jump on to the second.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so the second book is was written the same time as the first. And so when we were writing about finding your purpose and looking at that self-awareness and mindfulness, a
Mhm.
topic that really stood out and that really needed more attention was this term self-care. So when we're being self-aware of, hey, wait a minute, I'm doing really excellent taking care of my physical health, then you start to recognize that, hey, wait a minute, I'm actually lacking a lot of emotional health or I'm actually really lacking a lot of social health. And so, with this journey to self, we kind of start to see those blind spots, and we start to see the areas where we might need more support to find our wellness. So the second book is called Finding Your Wellness, a guidebook to self-care. And that really goes hand in hand with our purpose, with the more meaningful life and self awareness, because it lets us look at ourselves where we're maybe lacking in the ability to kind of thrive. The book really helps the reader thrive in all areas. So it finds a balance between, the emotional mind, the physical body, the, mental mind, and then even the spiritual side. And spirituality looks different for everyone in the sense that it maybe is not religion. Maybe it's nature. Maybe it's being outside in something greater than ourselves. Maybe it is, this idea of forest bathing. Maybe that is spirituality for many people. So it reminds us that there's, a lot of different components to health and wellness, and that we need to kind of be, completely mindful of where we stand with our health and wellness.
Hmm. So it's basically, I think, the core behind both the books is the alignment between body, mind, as well as spirit, because I think wellness, then having that clarity and mindfulness to seek your purpose, I think it all connects with the alignment between body and mind.
100%. And you mentioned this idea of emotional, spiritual, and the body, mind, and I'd also incorporate the breath. We forget that breath is life, right? This idea that breath is life. If we're not breathing, we're not alive. And so it actually really does slow us down to be self-aware of our breath, be mindful of our breath. Everyone breathes, but how often do we take a nice big breath in through our nose and a long breath out through our mouth? That's a nice way just to relieve tension. So breathing out your mouth is how we relieve tension. And then even looking at how we breathe, people wonder, whether it's in a yoga class or whether it's in their day-to-day life, like, should we be breathing through our mouth? Research indicates no, we should actually be breathing through our nose. And even stuff like that has been lost over the years in teachings. We call that natural breath when you breathe in and out through your nose. There's many benefits for your health and wellness when you're mindfully aware of how you're breathing. Breathing through your nose will protect you against a lot of inborn air viruses. It will help you kind of, breathe in oxygen that's clean and fresh for your body, breathing in through your nose, because our nose has these amazing little hairs that protect us. And so stuff like that where, it's been lost in teachings or in our society to kind of slow it down and be self-aware and mindful of, our mind, body, and breath and spirit.
Hmm. Makes sense. Also, now talking about EMDR and hypnosis, you have been quite vocal about the shocking truths behind EMDR and hypnosis. They are pretty much very popular therapies, but there are a lot of misconceptions, especially around EMDR and hypnosis. So, what are some of them that you have encountered, and how do you address them in your work?
Yeah, and EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And a lot of people, when they think about eye movement and they connect it with like health and wellness, and some people don't really make the connection, or they think it's, voodoo or magic science, or they don't recognize that it actually is an evidence-based, researched modality for healing. And so, looking at our eyes, obviously we know our eyes are connected to our brain. And when we're starting to use our eyes to the advantage of, health and wellness, and finding ways to desensitize trauma, there actually is a correlation and connection between how we move our eyes, what we're kind of thinking about, and what we do with our brain. So we make neural pathways, and I mean, it's not too far-fetched to think about, hey, when we're looking at things, that's how we learn. When we're reading things, that's how we learn. When we're hearing things, that's how we learn. Our brain's responding to what we're seeing and what we're hearing. And so EMDR works to kind of tap into the neural pathways that connect our eyes to our brain, and it does help heal traumatic memories. And so EMDR is also a little bit misunderstood because people think EMDR is just eye movements. The title is misleading. It does have EM as eye movements in the title, but you can actually find that health and wellness and healing through bilateral stimulation. And that means, as you look left and right, you can tap on your, knees, you can tap on your thighs, you can tap on your shoulders with the same, left, right, left, right, left, right, as you would looking with your eyes. You could actually engage, the healing benefits of EMDR, or what we often refer to as bilateral stimulation, by listening to certain, tones that switch from one ear to the other at a certain pace. So it really is an art and a science combining, eye movements or bilateral stimulation with, triggering or uncomfortable thoughts to kind of desensitize them. So that's a really neat approach with EMDR. And there is a lot of misunderstandings when people do experience it is very powerful. And sometimes people, always need answers, or they need to understand what's going on. And, we know so little about the human brain. And, what we do know is that evidence does suggest that using these modalities helps heal our minds. Hypnotherapy is also another one that people really have a lot of misunderstandings on. And this is idea of, like, brainwashing, or people who don't have control over their thoughts or body. You see often hypnotherapy or hypnosis in media as, getting people to do things that they don't want to do. That's not what hypnotherapy is about. It's really about helping people go into a state of being open to, suggestions that are positive and healthy, and really healing. And they do work towards the client just being in a space to heal. We often enter counseling, or we often enter any kind of unknown situation with fear and kind of, reserve, and we kind of put our guards up, and, without going too far down the rabbit hole around what happens in our body and our brain when we're or anxiety, or when we're panicking, is that we kind of shut off something called the prefrontal cortex. That's this area of our brain that helps us remember what we learned. In hypnotherapy, it really is calming down the mind so that prefrontal cortex comes back online, so that we're able to kind of be in a calm space with, regulated heart rate, nice, good breathing, and feeling calm enough to heal, which is a really neat approach as well. So EMDR and hypnotherapy is not done to you, it's done with you. And it really is something that the client, once they're there and kind of seeing the benefits of it, it really does make sense. So it's really hard to explain unless you have an opportunity to try it out, but I highly recommend engaging with a professional in your area that practices EMDR. Also, if you're curious, looking at clinical hypnosis. So making sure that whoever you do, work with or approach has their registration and is a practitioner with licensing. That's really important to remember, is that there's a lot of, weekend courses for a lot of programs, but it's really important to get, someone who knows what they're doing, and that you do feel safe, and that you could trust.
Course, of course. And that's, I think, let's just, I think it should be kind of a leap of faith, or maybe, just uh, having that initial barrier broken to try both these modalities, of course, with the
And I love
right
that
and guides. Yeah.
you mentioned the word barrier, and this idea of even like a stigma, and I'm so glad that mental health is moving away from having, stigmas or having all these barriers in the way, where, people can access support, whether they're in, the worst moment of their life, or whether they're just kind of, trying to be proactive. If we're noticing triggers coming up in our life, and if they're causing a little bit of uncomfortableness, it's a great time to get that dealt with before it develops into a big problem. And so knowing that you could access a mental health professional at any point in your life, it doesn't have to be in a crisis. And we often encourage people not to access mental health in a crisis because, come earlier, because you don't need to kind of need it in order to kind of benefit from it.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I agree with you. Great. And it's really eye-opening to hear your take on these methods for the listeners as well, Dr. Cindy. So thank you so much for addressing uh, to the misconceptions. And now we shift on to another, very, very popular yet very nuanced practice, which is yoga and holistic healing into modern therapy. So, your approach uniquely blends traditional therapeutic techniques with practices like yoga and holistic healing. So, how do you exactly do that to create a comprehensive self care strategy?
Yeah. And, I'm really happy that we're talking about all these amazing topics because they do integrate so well. EMDR is looking at eye movement, and we also mentioned like bilateral stimulation. Hypnotherapy is looking at calming the mind. And what we're doing with yoga is we're really moving our body, and often we look for balance. And so, whatever we do to one side in our body with yoga, we do to the other. And so if you're looking at all these modalities and how they connect, and that common thread is that even yoga is looking for people to find, that state of ease, to connect their body and their breath. And so when we're integrating, EMDR, bilateral stimulation, and if we're doing it in a place that we are able to move our body, that's not so far of a stretch. Looking at EMDR 2.0, which is a training that MJRA International offers, we move, left foot, right foot. And if you're thinking about yoga, there's a lot of movements that you could make that go left, right, left, right. Same with your breath, really calming down the breath, breathing into the places that you feel safe with. And then sometimes even to looking at different styles of yoga is that sometimes stillness is the practice, right? So you're kind of holding a pose, you're holding the pose in stillness, and you're breathing. You're being mindful of what you're thinking. And then sometimes you're also cued to incorporate positive affirmations. And so a lot of the time, whether it's I am strong or I am safe or, I am breathing in, I am breathing out, to really promote that self-awareness, the affirmations that are positive, and also this mindful breathing. And so we're kind of combining modalities regardless, even if we're aware of it within yoga. Yoga as a philosophy also has many limbs to health and healing. So you're looking at self-study, you're looking at, your breath practicing, you're looking at how we move our body, we're looking at how we live our life. And so all these modalities are there to help us heal. And so really it just seems common knowledge that it would be beneficial to integrate all these modalities. And so I am trained as a 500-hour yoga teacher trainer. I am trained as an EMDR, MDRA certified therapist. I am trained as a clinical hypnotherapy therapist. And so all these tools that I'm seeing that connect, I'm saving kind of everyone this idea of going down all these different modalities of learning when they can be such a benefit to integrate them.
Yeah, of course, of course. And since you mentioned hypnosis, when we talk about hypnotherapy or clinical hypnotherapy, so I was in a conversation with yesterday. So we were talking about the misconceptions around hypnosis or hypnotherapy. So the kind of uh, projections we have seen on TV and media about hypnosis,
Yeah.
kind of they are very misguiding, very much misguiding, and kind of giving a wrong impression about this modality, and how effective it can be. Uh,
Yeah.
would you like to throw some light on that as well?
Yeah, and looking at hypnotherapy and kind of as we were mentioning around this idea of what it does to your body and your brain, and it really does promote this trance, which is a calming. It's supposed to, and it's meant to, bring in this open awareness around a calm space to have a healthy mind. And so even when you're looking at yoga and people talk about like savasana is that resting corpse pose, or this idea of at the end of practice when you're doing a little bit of meditation, or this idea of stillness of your mind, that is a way, when you're looking at the goal of hypnotherapy, and it is to calm and ease the mind. It's to, sometimes open it up for suggestibility, which would be positive affirmations around, hey, things like I am strong or things like I am safe. It can be used definitely to help promote the path of healing. It's not done involuntarily, so people cannot be hypnotized without having a little bit of being openness to it. We could definitely not listen to what people are saying and doing. Subconsciously, there are different opinions around that. But this idea that, people can't be hypnotized, like as I mentioned earlier, you have to be involved in the process and you have to be open to it. Also, this idea that hypnotherapy is evidence based, also. So it's not voodoo, it's not magic, it's not something that, isn't scientifically based. As we're talking about exploring the mind and connecting, ways to read the brain and what's happening when we're elucidating hypnotherapy, therapy, or when we're looking at EMDR, or when we're looking at the journey to health and healing, a lot of things happen in our brain at all times. And even when we're looking at, healing, also exploring what happens in our brain when we're in trauma, right? We're kind of exploring the brain more, but clinical hypnotherapy is something that is moving forward as a helping modality.
True, true. Yeah. Also, now we have talked about wellness. Let's move to purpose, Dr. Sringi. So, it is an ever evolving journey. And in your work, you describe purpose not as a, excuse me, no, yeah, so not as a final destination, but as an evolving journey.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. And yeah, like purpose is not this like destination set point when you achieve it, game over, life's done. No, like purpose really is it changes with your life stages. When you're thinking about, when you're 10 years old, your biggest purpose might have been, to get out of, elementary school. When you were a teenager, your purpose might have been to, graduate high school. And
Yeah.
as you're kind of navigating in life, people will have different purposes. Maybe it's to meet a spouse, maybe it's to get married, maybe the purpose then is to have a child, maybe the purpose then is to get a career or buy a house, or our purpose does evolve, but it's always good to kind of check in and make sure it's aligned with who we are and what we want, right? This is kind of where society kind of gets us confused, where we're seeing so many social comparisons around, everyone wanting a specific, type of car, or everyone wanting a specific type of house, or people maybe wanting like a motorboat, or maybe people wanting, a side by side, or there's all these things that people think that they want because they see others getting them or having them. And then we forget that, what is our purpose? What do we want? Who are we? And what are we striving for in this life? Not everyone wants to have kids. Not everyone wants to be a pro athlete. Not everyone wants to buy a boat. So these are all things that, we kind of get caught up in comparing, and we get caught up in, kind of losing our purpose to kind of fit in with the crowd. And we forget that we were never meant to all be the same. We are all born in this earth with different, gifts. Some of us are great at ballet. Some of us are great at math. Some of us are great at, you know, swimming. Some of us are great at running. So we all have different strength. And the fact that when we try to be like someone else, we lose what our purpose is. We lose who we are, and we lose, the individuality that we all have to make the world a better place. If everyone strived to be an accountant, we'd have so many accountants where we wouldn't have art. We wouldn't have, other things that are required with other parts of the mind and other talents that need to thrive. So it really is this calling back to understanding what our purpose is, and then, as the world moves as it does, is not to get caught up in that flow of everyone else's purpose, and just to kind of find our own. And that's when we're going to feel most aligned and most happy and healthy.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. And as you mentioned about, when we kind of get kind of, lost or overwhelmed by life's demands, a house, car, job, or maybe uh, any kind of financial aims. So I think it's mostly system driven, but uh, purpose should be more of a human centric uh, journey. So do you agree on this, or is it something different?
I think you're absolutely correct. We often use money or the financial, security to talk about our wellness, right? We feel good when we're not stressed about money. However, you're seeing so many people with money still be, unhappy. And so we've already recognized that, money does not equal happiness. And yes, in some capacities there are research to suggest that, money will make,
Yeah.
life less stressful. But when you're looking at what actually makes your soul or your spirit or your heart or your body or your mind happy, it really is like connection with others. It really is, aligning with doing things that you like to do. It really is bringing it back to, people who are so connected with family and just like with what they do in life. They don't work for the money. They work for the satisfaction of doing what they enjoy. And yes, we all want to be, feeling like we're okay financially. But at the end of the day, it also sometimes motivates people. If they're not where they're at financially, that motivates them to kind of, do things a little bit differently that still align with their purpose, but have them motivated, right? There's some levels of stress that are healthy. Having some financial stressors is not an unhealthy, way to be. But when we get so obsessed with getting a certain amount in our bank accounts and we forget the reason why we're going to work every day, and if it is for money, then that's kind of that problem with society, right? Because, money is a human made um commodity. It's not, something that when we were, born on this earth, however many years ago, it was never something that was there, right? We kind of created it. So it is man-made, and money is something that we now decided is our purpose. But if you're boiling it down to, the gifts that we're naturally born with or the gifts that we grow and that we get really good at, that nothing to do with money, right? When we do things that feel good, we do it for the feeling. When you're thinking about helping others in life, kindness is something that is what we need more of in the world. And when you're kind to a stranger, or when you make someone laugh, or even if it's not a stranger, when you're kind to someone that you love, that right there is worth more than money, right? Like bringing good into the world is worth more than money. So definitely not using finances as, the goal post to see how you're doing or your purpose is a kind and better way to live than always chasing the dollar or chasing the money in the bank, because that's
Mm.
not going to bring happiness. It might for a short time bring less stress, but it's not going to give you that, like, end of the life, when I look back on I had this many dollars in my bank account that made me happy. It's not going to do that for you.
Right, absolutely right. And I love the fact that you gave a balanced approach to this idea or this particular notion, because money shouldn't be, yeah, money and financial upliftment definitely is a very powerful motivator. However, it shouldn't be the sole motivator for
Mhm.
everything you do or you live for. So that's a really refreshing and balanced approach, Dr. Cindy. Well, before we wrap up, if you can, you emphasize on practical tips for reducing anxiety and enhancing self-care. So we sometimes we associate so many things, like going for um, a good shower, hot shower, or a pedicure, manicure, and something like that for self-care. There are still quite a lot of misconceptions around that. So, what are some actionable tips you would like to share with our listeners to tap into their inner reservoir of strength, especially during
Yeah.
challenging times?
I love that you use the word tap into their inner reservoir, because 100% self care is not something we need to buy. It's not something we need to go to. Taking that deep breath, really giving yourself the privilege of a nice big breath is so therapeutic. So even if right now taking a nice big breath in through your nose, long breath out through your mouth, one more nice big breath in through your nose, long breath out through your mouth. The gift of air is definitely self-care. Other things to do that, we can tap into the inner reservoir is go outside, feel the sun on your face. Go outside and just really listen to kind of hear what's happening out there. Being mindful in the moment, knowing that in this moment when you wiggle your toes and when you kind of, check in on your body and look around the room, that you're present, that you're not living yet last week or you're not living next week, you're living right now in the moment. That's the best gift for self-care is breath, getting outside in nature, being present in the moment. And then the last one is smiling. Smiling is something that if we smile, it makes us feel good. And if we smile and look at someone else, it makes them feel good. Smiling is free. Smiling is something that if the world did more of it, it would be a better place.
Absolutely. And that reminds me of laughter yoga. It's really
Mhm.
great. And also, Dr. Cindy, if our listeners would like to check out your books, Finding Your Purpose and Finding Your Wellness, and also would like to connect with you to explore more about all these modalities, channels, and also tapping into their inner reservoirs, how they can be that.
Mhm. Yeah, so I have a website called guidebookconsulting.ca. There's also the books on Amazon. They're at Barnes and Noble. The books are luckily available online in many places, but guidebookconsulting.ca, that's the direct way to get a hold of me. I also have Facebook, so that's under Cindi Saj, Saj is the last name. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, kind of anywhere. So feel free to reach out. I'll respond to all the emails I get. So if you do reach out, I would love to hear from you. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for having me.
Lovely. That's lovely, Dr. Cindy, and really generous. We'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes. And thank you so much for shedding light on not only shedding light on the misunderstood truths behind therapies like EMDR and hypnosis, but also, you inspire us to see purpose as a dynamic, ever evolving journey. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. This is great talking to you.
My listeners, remember the power to heal and transform lies within each of us. So stay curious, stay empowered, and let's continue to spread knowledge and thrive together. Until next time, take care and embrace your journey to wellness. Thank you.